Do you know what makes it worse as well? We had a travelling party going down, all of us, this weekend, and another guy was in charge of booking the hotel rooms, and I was obviously meant to have a room by myself, nice and cosy, you know, go to sleep after whatever the result was of the game. And yeah, anyway, lo and behold, the numbers got mixed up, and I ended up in this situation. Sorry, you walk in. Hello. Right, so we're sharing.
We're sharing a bed.
We're sharing a bed. There's no window. We're downstairs. We're in a dungeon. And also the toilet. I can see people showering, and that's great. That's absolutely fantastic.
No, I'm here for it.
That's brilliant. And to make matters worse as well, I was kind of right, wasn't I, as well, on last week's Friday show. You know, when I make videos on United, it's sometimes hard to really know how they're going to win a game because they're such a flip-flop club. But obviously, against Arsenal, I did kind of notice that they packed the midfield and forced Arsenal to go out wide. And despite losing that game, you know, it kind of worked for them, or they at least looked more compact. So I assumed that they'd do that against City, and it worked, didn't it? It worked. Most notably by the fact that in the second half, they just kept pinging the ball out to Jeremy Doku, who just kept R1 dribbling it against Aaron Wan-Bissaka for 45 minutes. So yeah, it really worked. I hate them.
Shut up, dog!
Do you know what else I hate as well? Real Madrid.
And he scores! Rudiger scores for Real Madrid. They've won the penalty shootout.
Come on, Dortmund. So the first thing I'd note is simply the fact that Dortmund are actually just not being given enough credit for what they've achieved in this competition so far. To knock out Atletico Madrid and PSG and also top the group that they were in is no mean feat. And I think the most notable thing that I've noticed about Dortmund in the knockout phase anyway is the scorelines against Atletico Madrid and then against PSG, and how contrasting they were, and how contrasting PSG and Atletico Madrid's style of play is. Come on, you Irons. Of course, remember the legs against Atletico Madrid ended 5-4 in favour of Dortmund. Atletico Madrid, of course, a very traditionally defensive side under Simeone. And here is the pass map for Borussia Dortmund against Atletico Madrid in that game. And here's Atletico Madrid's pass map, and if you flick between the two, you can quite clearly see that Dortmund was simply forcing Atletico Madrid out wide and really packing the middle of the park. And what that did, because they knew that Atletico Madrid's players weren't that threatening out wide, really, and they don't really score that many goals from out wide, it kind of nullified them, but also helped open the game up when Dortmund got that early goal. So they almost invited Atletico Madrid on, who were obviously traditionally defensive when they went ahead in that first half, open the game up, and Atletico Madrid do not want that. That is the one thing that they absolutely hate, and Dortmund capitalised on it. And you wouldn't have really expected it, or certainly I didn't going into that game, that it'd be such a high scoring tie for both sides. I thought it'd be like 1 or 2-0 to Atletico Madrid. That's kind of what you expect when Atletico play in the Champions League, but Dortmund really played them at their own game and forced Atletico to open up the game. And if I flick over to the PSG tie here, what can you notice? Well, Dortmund have spread their bodies out across spread the men out across the pitch, and this is to hug those wide areas where Kylian Mbappe is so deadly. Of course, he is the focal point of PSG, and Dortmund are no mugs, they know this. So by protecting those wide areas, you in return nullify Kylian Mbappe and therefore PSG's goal threat, and they actually did this so well that PSG just didn't score a goal across both legs. And I know that they hit the post 4 times at the Parc des Princes, but you know, you do need a bit of luck to win this competition. So the fact that they can concede none to a predominantly attacking side and then open the game up against a predominantly defensive side shows an astute level of tactical adaptability and flexibility. And basically the point I'm trying to get across is that Dortmund should have a plan for whatever Real Madrid try and do against them in this game, unless it's bribe the refs. So, given the fact Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo are so good out wide, you'd expect Dortmund to set up similarly to how they did against Paris Saint-Germain, really packing those wide areas and nullifying those wide areas of the pitch. Of course, this might leave Bellingham a bit free, but Dortmund are going to have to take a sacrifice in this game. And given the fact that they used to play with Bellingham, they know what he's about, I'd take that risk and really nullify those wide flanks. Also, there's that expectation, I think, not just from Madrid fans, but from football fans in general, for Madrid to just leather Dortmund here and really take the game to Dortmund, given the disparity on paper of both sides. So I think Dortmund, you will see them sitting deep and looking to hit them on the break. Once stroke if Dortmund get the ball out into these wide areas to who I think will be Sancho and Adeyemi in this game, well, what should they do with the ball? Well, if you actually look at some of the goals that Madrid have conceded, notably against City and Bayern Munich, there's a bit of a current theme with them. Over the quarters and semis, Madrid have actually conceded an awful lot of goals from simple cut insides. This one here from Josko Vardiol, and then in the same game, Phil Foden from the other flank as well. They're goals in and around the edge of the D where the press either hasn't been sufficient or it's not been timed correctly and a player's been able to get a shot off. This was, of course, a bit more in transition, which will suit Dortmund nicely in this game. But again, another cut inside goal and a fantastic finish. And then also this one from Leroy Sané as well. Of course, a few more bodies back for Real Madrid here, but still a fantastic goal nonetheless. So that's 4 goals right there where players have cut inside and just had a shot at the keeper. So what I would do if I was managing Dortmund in this game is, of course, they do like to set up in the 4-2-3-1 with Julian Brandt in the 10, but as for Jadon Sancho and Karim Adeyemi, I'd have them out wide still, but sort of more narrow wingers. Imagine like on the corners of the penalty area, whereby they can either supplement Julian Brandt and drift inside, or in transition, get out to the flanks as quickly as possible to receive the ball there. That way, they've then got the option to either go to the byline and get across into the big man, Nicholas Füllkrug, or take someone on in midfield, either beat the press or, beat a man, which Jadon Sancho's been superb at this season, by the way, in the Champions League, and then simply get a shot off because, they're probably not going to have many clear-cut chances against Real Madrid. They've, of course, been defensively brilliant this season. So Dortmund are going to have to optimise their chances. And I think there's a little chink in their armour, Real Madrid here, given the consistent cut-inside nature of some of the goals that they have conceded. So yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination. Don't get me wrong, Real Madrid are absolutely the favourites to win this game, but I'd still give Dortmund maybe 25 to 30% chance. Of course, it's the old cliche that, anything can happen in a final, and it certainly can, and Dortmund are certainly no mugs. Anyway, time for the interview part of the video. Unfortunately, here at 442, we have a German football expert working for us. That is none other than Mr. Ed McCambridge. He lives in Berlin himself and has been following German football for many, many years. So he is going to now shed some insight on what you can expect from Borussia Dortmund. Take it away, Ed.
Well, I think you can probably compare this current Borussia Dortmund side maybe to Wenger's Arsenal, or maybe even a little bit like the current Tottenham team, in that they're really, really good and they can take on any of the big boys on their day, very well coached, well drilled, a good style, but they just don't have the depth and often the mentality to push through over the course of an entire season. So they've got certainly some good results in the Bundesliga this year, but there are patches where maybe a player's out of form, maybe things aren't going so well, and the wheels have fallen off. They came 5th in the Bundesliga, so a few places lower than they did last season. Scored far fewer goals. Same deal in the DFB Pokal. They were knocked out in the last 16 by Stuttgart. Now, bear in mind, Bayern were knocked out in an earlier round, so it was really anyone's for the taking. And I just think that the Champions League has been the salvation for the team this season. Like I say, on their day, a bit like Wenger's Arsenal used to be, getting to cup finals and things like that, they can beat anybody. And they've shown that fantastically in the Champions League this year. We saw the celebrations with the players and the fans after that PSG game, and everyone was going absolutely wild. There's a real sort of family celebration and catharsis in the air that they'd finally got to a major final again after so long. And I think, like I say, they can beat anyone on their day. Whether they can this weekend remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, you did say there that they're a very tactically astute side, really, and they've demonstrated that in the Champions League this season. I think what I've noted on in this video is, of course, they beat Atletico Madrid 5-4 on aggregate, which is a scoreline I don't think anyone really expected, mainly not because of Dortmund, but because of how defensively resolute Atletico Madrid usually are. But they kind of seemed to open that game up, and it was almost like a basketball match, very end-to-end. Whereas against PSG, who are a more traditionally attacking side, they managed to shut up shop and concede none, and then take the chances when they came and win 2-0. So does that show a level of tactical flexibility and adaptability? And also, does it show that whatever Madrid try and do against Dortmund, Dortmund should theoretically have a plan for it in the final?
I think it definitely does. And one thing I think is probably worth pointing out is that group that they came through. They were in that group of death with Newcastle and Milan and PSG, and they actually topped that group. I think they were 3 points clear of second. They came through the PSV game after that, and the game you mentioned first just now, that Atletico game, I think that's the sort of game people expect Dortmund to play. You score 2, we'll score 4. that constantly taking slugs out of one another is something we've seen for years with Borussia Dortmund. You might remember that famous game against Liverpool at Anfield where it was just goals at either end. The real surprise was the PSG one. To win 1-0 away and win 1-0 at home, absolutely fantastic. I think PSG had something like 30 shots.
Yeah, they hit the post 4 times in the home leg, didn't they?
Yes, they rode their luck, of course. I mean, PSG also had, I think, 70 or 75% possession. So there was definitely an element of luck involved. But Dortmund rode it. And I think, we saw a towering performance from Mats Hummels, scored the goal for Dortmund in the second leg, and also was just absolutely unbeatable at the back. How he's not gone to the Euros, by the way, is beyond me. And I think they'll need another performance like that this weekend if they're going to beat Madrid. It's not going to be, you score 2 and we'll score 3. It's going to have to be all hands on deck. Let's keep the ball out at all costs and try and nick one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there'll be a lot of impetus on Madrid to take the game to Dortmund as well. So that should kind of fall into the hands. And I think the way that they kind of locked Mbappe out the game, similar with Vinny Jr., in it really, they're outlet players and very good ones at that. So it should play out similarly. Now, let's talk about Jadon Sancho, because it's kind of, it links in towards the Premier League, which of course is where our viewers are predominantly based. Now, I don't really know what to say about Sancho. I've always thought he's a fantastic footballer. He's got bags and bags of talent. But why do you think maybe this will be a question where you can just slag off United, I don't know, but why does it seem to work so well for him at Borussia Dortmund, but it's just not quite clicked elsewhere for him yet?
Well, I think you make a point there, Adam. It would be foolish not to mention the elephant in the room, which is United. To think he's a lad, remember, who came through Man City, your clubs.
He did, yeah.
Your youth academy, went to Borussia Dortmund, 2 clubs brilliant at handling young players, pushing them through, systems that are easy to follow, very well coached things. I bet, the training is so on point at Dortmund like it is at City. So he's come through and shone. Then he chooses to go to Manchester United, which in hindsight looks like a mistake. Chaotic era at the club, constant managerial turnover, players constantly falling out with the manager. So he went into a sort of, a bit of a bear pit there, and it was probably never going to work out considering how easy he'd had it in terms of coaching up until that point. The second thing is obviously his return to Dortmund. We saw Terzic, his coach, saying after the PSG game, look how much he's enjoying himself. Sancho scored against PSV in the last 16, was maybe, apart from Hummels, man of the match against PSG in that second leg because he was working hard. And it's so obvious now that he's back somewhere where he's just enjoying it. Like Terzic said, he's got good friends at the club, the likes of Marco Reus, that were so happy to have him back. And he's away from the limelight, the nonsense, the circus that's Manchester United. And he's just focusing on his football and he's thriving. And another one, we just said about Mats Hummels not going to the Euros. I think Jadon Sancho is hard done by, to be honest. I know there are other great players in his position, but he's really showing what can happen if you just go back to basics, get back to a club where you're happy and shine.
Yeah, I guess it's playing with freedom. That's what I'd say. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but that's really what he seemed to do. Not just with Sancho, but also with maybe players like Adeyemi as well. You've seen him, exploit a lot of space and score a few goals this season in the Champions League. So finally, Ed, how do you think the final will play out? And on top of this, you can add a score prediction at the end. But how do you see the course of the game going? Because me personally, of course, Madrid are the favourites. They've got so much quality, but they're a very individualistic side. I'd still give Dortmund maybe 30 to 35% chance of winning this game. So how do you see it panning out?
Well, I'd love to sit here. The heart does say Dortmund. I'd love to say, no, I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to win. But the realist in me says they're up against the juggernaut, aren't they? 14 titles, Real Madrid. The romance and tradition around that club and how much this competition means to them. Do they have a chance of winning the game? Yes. I think one of the main ways they could do it might be set pieces. You've got the big lad, Füllkrug up front. Mats Hummels obviously scored against PSG from a set piece. That might be one way they can do it. Cause a bit of chaos in the box. Like I said earlier, they're going to have to play like they did against PSG in that second leg. It will be a bit harem-scarum. There will be shots hitting the woodwork without doubt. Whether they can keep the likes of Vinny Jr., Rodrigo and Bellingham out for another 90 minutes is going to be a very, very tough task. Can they win it? Yes. If they do, it's going to be 1-0. I think, like I say, the head says probably 2 or 3-0 to Real Madrid. But let's hope for a super competitive game because I loved it. It's a lovely romantic pair of teams in the final. And I'd love to see, just for German football, how brilliant Leverkusen have been this year, for instance, as well. If Dortmund can sign the season off with the Champions League, it'd be a real cherry on the cake for German football.
Yeah, it'd be slightly funnier as well for the Harry Kane arc as well, wouldn't it, if Dortmund came out on top.
Thank you very much, Ed. Yes, I'm on my knees for Borussia Dortmund to win this game. The United game was an absolute hammer blow to me, and after what Real Madrid did to City as well, I just want some sort of, what is in my eyes, justice. Anyway, guys, do not forget to subscribe. I hope you've had a lovely, lovely week and a lovely, lovely weekend. I've been Adam Monk, and of course, as well, this is the last Friday show, club football-wise, of the season. We'll be taking this into the Euros now. But yeah, have a lovely weekend, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.